I was going to do the history of FNAF for its birthday, but then my friend said, why don't you review every Five Nights at Freddy's game in one video? That would be funny. So that's what this is. Every FNAF game reviewed in one video. And there are a lot. But it's FNAF. There isn't a lot of gameplay, so there shouldn't be a lot to say, right? Surprisingly, no. Every game, even if they have similar gameplay, is very different when playing because of every small change made between games. They are still all very basic, but have one or two things that define them compared to the other ones, before or even after. I will be covering FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4, Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, and VR. I do not count FNAF World as a game and don't really want to review it. That being said, let's begin. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 was released on July 23, 2014. It was a very basic game. Sit in a room, look at some cameras, don't die. There are 4 animatronics that you have to watch out for: Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy. 3 of them, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy, sit in a back room where they remain inactive until the night starts, and Foxy sits in his own Pirate's Cove, with the curtain closed. Each has a different set of very basic programming and pathing that they follow. Bonnie leaves, heads towards the party room, then the front area, and will always attack the night guard on the left side. Bonnie is the easiest to scare off, but is the one you'll see the most. He's the most active on night 1, but he's also the easiest to get rid of. For him, just shut the door, wait a few seconds, and guaranteed he's gone. He's also the easiest to spawn in the cameras, since he's always looking at them. Chica is very similar, just on the right side. She's also a little faster, but isn't as active the first few nights like Bonnie is. She also has a small mechanic where the camera in the kitchen is out and you can't find her. You can actually hear her in the kitchen. Why? Because why not? It's just a different mechanic and only for that one animatronic in that one room. Chica is a lot harder on the later nights though, and isn't as easy to scare off when she's at your door. Not hard, just harder than Bonnie. Foxy's mechanic is another common one. He doesn't move unless you aren't looking at him with the camera, which is actually a good game balance in this case because it kinda gives you a reason to actually use the cameras and not just sit in the room with the doors shut. The only other fear there is the power running out, which isn't even that hard because you can just keep checking the lights until Bonnie and Chica are at the door. That's not possible to do with Foxy. You have to watch him, because he will just pop up and it's impossible to react and close the door unless you see him on the cameras. Finally is Freddy, who doesn't really move much until the later nights or once you've run out of power, but you aren't going to see him moving, he'll just kill you. The final animatronic isn't like any of the other ones, and it's the famous Golden Freddy. He's just an Easter egg that's supposed to be very creepy. The only other character other than yourself is the pre-recorded and infamous phone guy. He monologues every night, is not only the very basic tutorial, but also the only source of story in this game. And luckily as a tutorial, he seems natural. It's hard in most games to do. Take Link's Awakening. The kids say, press an A button. In real life, there is no A button. It's not like that. It's check the cameras and watch him, and you might want to shut the doors when they come close. He actually gives advice like a boss and what to do, and acts like it's a real job. The gameplay itself, though, is very, very basic. Can't leave the room, you can only look at your cameras, open and close doors, and turn on the lights to check if they're there. Very basic. But one thing that makes the very basic gameplay very scary, and it's not the killer animatronics, is the inevitable power bar. Nothing else in this game is scary. Bonnie at the door? Not scary. Foxy moving for the first time? Not scary. Even Golden Freddy isn't that scary. But what is scary is Bonnie at the door when it's 5 AM and you only have 5% left. Foxy moving for the first time and you don't know where the other ones are at and you've got 3 hours left but only 30%. That little bar is what makes the game scary. Only because it's inevitable. Honestly, this game has such a different sense of fear at 5 AM than it does at 1 AM. and it's all because of that power bar. The animatronics themselves aren't scary. They are cheap jump scares. But knowing that you're so close to 6 with low power, not knowing how much longer you have to make it, is. Especially since on the first few nights, you will probably get away with overpower usage, like keeping the doors closed for too long or the lights on for too long. But once you get to the later nights, all of the animatronics are much more active, so you really have to be careful with the resource management. Again, it's all very basic, but adding the mental fear of the power bar makes the jump scares actually scary. And that's what captivated many. Simple gameplay that was still scary. Cheap jump scares usually only get people once. I know I said it in the Bendy video, but that game moved from creepy scary to jump scare scary, and it made the game seem more like a joke than an actual horror game. This one doesn't have that problem, because all the horror is psychological. Eventually the jump scares might not get you, but seeing the power bar lower will scare you. Every night the animatronics move a little more and a little faster, so the resource management becomes a lot scarier. And every day Phone Guy records something for you until the 4th night where he actually dies. And you can hear the same thing that you'd hear if Bonnie was about to kill you. And it's literally the same sound effects. But it actually turns out there's a scream beforehand and you can see that Colton Freddy most likely killed him. But that's just a theory. Him dying isn't scary, but what happens on night 5 is. The phone rings and you wouldn't expect him to be talking, and he's not. It's just a muffled, creepy voice. But if you're skilled enough, or lucky enough, you can make it to the secret night 6, which kinda breaks the name of the game, but it was cool finding for the first time. It's just even harder than night 5, there's nothing too special, but after you win you get a check and you can see that you made 120 for the week, and that your name is Mike Schmidt, which means nothing in a series where names mean everything. The final night is Custom Night 7, where you can change the level of activity from 0 to 20, 0 being inactive, and 20 being the hardest. And honestly, the all 20 challenge is extremely hard. I watched it and it was crazy. The one I watched just kept opening the camera and not even looking at it. Imagine not ever knowing where the killer robots are at, and the only way to save your life is to react, while also not running out of battery. It's a very basic addition, but it's nice that it's in. Honestly, that's the name of the game. Very basic, but still scary enough that it was very popular and fun to play. Enough to warrant another game. 4 months later. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was quickly released after the popularity of FNAF 1. Even though it's a sequel, most timelines show it takes place before FNAF 1. It introduced a new line of Freddy Fazbear's main group in the form of toy versions that were made to look like action figures. According to the lore, they are security animatronics, which is why they attack you. You aren't supposed to be there after hours. There is also a new animatronic, Balloon Boy, who is harmless, but the game doesn't tell you that. Phone Guy makes a return, and the first night he spits out a bunch of lore. He again spits out the tutorial, and even better explains all the new mechanics. This game does add a few new mechanics in order to make the area seem creepier. This time there is no doors on either side, and instead vents, which also means no closing the doors to protect yourself. A third passage was added right down the middle, which also added a light up for you to see the animatronics just staring at you. Now, how do you protect yourself if there isn't a door to close? Well, this time they give you a Freddy mask to wear, and if any of the animatronics get too close, that can be used as a disguise and they kinda just go away. Now, you can't use the camera or any of the lights when wearing the mask, but it does stop the animatronics. So what is stopping you from just wearing the mask all night? Well, two things. The first you are introduced to, which is the music box. The music box is remotely controlled through one of the cameras that watches the room it is in. You have to constantly wind it up in order to keep the puppet in there, because the puppet isn't fooled by the mask. So, to constantly have to remove the mask and rewind the music box forces the player to be on the camera. The second way the game forces you to not use the Freddy mask all night is the original animatronics, which in this case are the ones from the first game, but they aren't actually originals because of the lore. Yeah, it's confusing. But the mask doesn't always fool the original animatronics, and especially not Foxy. Instead, what you have to do for the newly named Withered animatronics is flash your light on them. You know, waste battery life. So it's very similar to the first game. To save yourself, you must use battery life, but you can't run out or else you're doomed. Again, that's the only real scary part. The animatronics themselves are somewhat creepy, and the weird cutscenes in between nights are especially creepy, but again, the true scary part of the game is the resource management. But this time there are two resources, the battery and the wind-up box, which use up each other. The wind-up box requires the camera to be used in order to wind it up, while also making you take away time you could be used scaring off the other animatronics. It gets very bad on night 4 and 5 when they seem to be constantly up and down the hall or in the vents and all you want to do is hide in your Freddy mask, but if you don't wind up that music box, you're even more dead. And the animatronics get very close. Like the last game, the animatronics get more and more active every night until night 5 when they are crazy active. Mango or Toy Foxy is especially the creepiest because technically in the lore, he bites the night guard's frontal lobe, being known as the bite of 87. After the hard 5th night, there's another special 6th night, which is just harder. Phone Guy calls again, even though he didn't call on night 5, saying that the place is actually closed and you don't need to be there. And we get even more story, someone used the suit.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
Other than that, it's just again a really hard buffed up night to test your skills. At the end of this one, you get an additional $20 and another newspaper clipping with some story. And finally another custom night where you can set all the animatronics from 0 to 20 again. The biggest thing about this game is it feels recycled. The game doesn't feel that new. Yes, there are a few new mechanics, the place looks different and so do some of the animatronics, but there is seriously nothing about this game that's excitingly new, except for one thing, the wind-up box. It's such a good mechanic because, like Foxy in the last game, it forces you to use the camera. Without it, you would just sit in the room with the Freddy mask on. But this one is somehow scarier, because it's not just check the camera like in FNAF 1, you actually have to waste time winding it back up just for it to click down again. The signal on the bottom that says it's almost running out scares you even more because now there are two resources to manage. You have to balance the battery life and the time it takes to wind it up, all with the animatronics moving towards you. Basically, every time you get off the camera, you have one standing in front of you. So yes, the game is recycled and the gameplay isn't much more exciting, but it actually is enough to notice a difference. And it is enough to say that the game is better. It's more stressful, it's scarier, and there are more animatronics, which all act differently. And it was also well received enough to have a sequel, again only 4 months later. And yes, these games are probably very easy to spit out because the gameplay isn't that complicated. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 takes place after 2 and 1 at a refurbished location that was changed into an amusement park. Again, you're a night security guard. The phone guy is back, but he sounds a little different. Because FNAF 1 and 2 phone guy is dead, this is actually phone dude. But again, he introduces all the new story elements and mechanics of the game. Now instead of just a camera system, there is also a maintenance panel which will reboot either audio devices, camera systems, ventilation, or all at once. This is because some of them can fail, and it might be only one camera, so you just reset the camera system, or something's in the ventilation, block it off, but don't for too long, then reset after that or everything goes wrong.
Alright, Nevins. Time to die!
It's the replacement in this game for the battery life or power. It's the scary stress factor. And you get notifications about which one is failing at what moments, which kinda makes the factor less scary. On the cameras there are different map sections you can toggle between, either the main floor and the staging areas and the ventilation area. On the second night, this new phone guy gives you an old audio tape, which is FNAF 1 and 2 phone guy. Also, as part of the audio device, a child's voice plays, which attracts Springtrap. It's the balance for shutting the doors or putting the mask on. But it isn't as good for two reasons. Reason 1, it doesn't work half the time. Because the audio plays in whatever room you're looking at on the camera, if it's too far, Springtrap doesn't go after it, which is lame, because the last two games had things that were guaranteed to protect you, closing the doors and wearing a mask. This doesn't always protect you, which means that as hard as you try to live, you might just die, which makes the game less fun. Second, it's not as scary. That might sound weird, but it's scary having Bonnie and Chica standing outside your door, or having Toy Bonnie or even messed up Freddy staring at you while you hear the heavy breathing under the mask, hoping they leave quickly. This isn't you interacting with the scary animatronic directly, it's 6 rooms down and something makes a noise for you. This also makes the animatronic Springtrap less scary. Closing a door that would physically stop the animatronics. The mask very clearly messes with the facial scanners, that all makes sense. This doesn't make sense, and is honestly lame compared to the last two concepts. Also, this game is very unclear about what you are watching move. Like the last two games were very clear, animatronics will come towards you, don't let them. This game doesn't explain that. You just have to watch it happen and probably very confused. And again, it's probably extremely confusing as to why a little child's voice distracts it, and you can see stuff walking in the window in front of you, which is almost always harmless. These are phantom versions of the animatronics, and they are somewhat rare to get, but they move around and there is nothing, from what I can tell, to stop a phantom jump scare. Oh, but from what I can also tell, none of them kill you. They just make all the systems fail. They are haunting spirits. It's never explained via the game. But the game mechanic is actually very good, because the restart system isn't very hard. To have this dark scary creature be somewhat scary, and have it mess up all your systems is actually good balancing of the system. For some, you get little hints that they're coming, like Balloon Boy being in the vent or Freddy walking across the window. But knowing that they don't kill you, this isn't scary. You just have to get through the somewhat panic that is the two system failures. Still, it's just not as good as the first two games' mechanics. Closing the door and seeing those shadows still standing there was basic but worked. The mask made sense and you could easily tell what was going on. This one, even though Springtrap is the only real threat, to be able to distract him so easily is stupid and boring, especially with the strategy of keeping him in the back of the store. But again, every night is slightly harder until you get to the Secret Night 6, which is just super hard. Honestly, it isn't even a secret at this point and it's expected. But now on to the second half of the game. Yes, there's actually more than just the 5 or 6 basic nights. There are mini games between nights that you can play. Now they again are all very basic, 8-bit minigames that come in 2 sets. Ones that seem to take place in the FNAF 1 location, where every night you play as a different one of the original 4 animatronics. You can walk around and that's it gameplay wise. There is someone telling you to follow them, and when you do, you hit an error and the now infamous purple guy. The last minigame in this series, you actually play as a crying child and you trap purple guy in the back room and there are 4 other children. Then he gets into the Springtrap suit and dies. The other set you play as the other animatronics, including Balloon Boy collecting balloons, Mangle collecting his parts, Chica collecting cupcakes, then one as Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie, which makes no sense, and another one that you play as a glitching purple bunny. They all introduce a basic amount of gameplay, move around as animatronics, and have fun, but you can actually glitch it out and give all the crying children cake and make them happy. The final minigame in the series of them is a birthday party, and then you give the final crying child a cake. They put on a mask, then all the children disappear. Let MatPat figure it out, cause that isn't what's important. What's important is new and different gameplay, even if it's 8-bit, which honestly isn't even bad because a lot of people love other 8-bit games like Undertale and Stardew Valley. These minigames are Easter eggs that happen in between nights, but depending on which ones you technically get 2 different endings. There's one where all the animatronics get taken apart is a bad ending, where giving all the crying children a happy birthday party is actually a happy ending. Still very basic. Tie these little games with a newspaper in FNAF 1 and you get a child murderer. I really don't like this game though. Springtrap being the only one that's able to kill you isn't scary. Now instead of watching out to multiple 3 to 4 or even 8 animatronics, you now have to watch out for one, and be prepared to restart a system after a cheap, not scary jump scare. Child voice is a bad saving mechanic because it's basic but boring. The actual good part about this game is the minigames in between the nights, because they're actually fun to play and more fun than the actual base game, and reveal a little bit of the story. But again, the games are so basic another one can come out 4 months later. So this is a FNAF game unlike any other FNAF game. And I'm not talking FNAF World unlike any other FNAF game. I mean it's so similar to FNAF but so different, and honestly all the differences are very welcome. So it actually takes place in a young boy's room, assuming you're playing the boy you play as in the 8-bit minigames that have made a great return. Instead of animatronics, you are searching for nightmares of the famous characters including a nightmare of Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy. And then an even more demonic version of Freddy, which is Fredbear. Then there's a nightmare version of Nightmare Fredbear, which is just super scary. And there are DLC versions with different skins, like Nightmare Mangle over Foxy. The nightmare follows a very basic patterns, similar to the first game. Bonnie haunts the left side and Chica the right. Instead of doors that you close, you have doors that you run up to and open. Weird mechanic, but remember, you're a kid, you want to check for the scary monsters. You shine your light out to see if they're coming, and if you hear breathing, just close right away because they're right there. There's also Foxy, who runs in and goes into the closet in front of you, and to have him leave, you have to close the closet door constantly to turn the scary Nightmare Foxy into a stuffed animal version. And this is the first game with the mechanic, but there's now actually a behind you. Might seem weird, but no, there has always only been what's in front of you. The store on the camera systems, but it's always what's in front of you. There is no camera system now, so to add a new mechanic to work with, scary little Freddys can pop up and then become Nightmare Freddy. But I do have to say, this game breaks a lot of the things that the last few games did very well. The one thing is the camera system. There is no camera, which makes sense, but it hurts the horror because it's not like the nightmares are anywhere else and slowly coming to you. There's no cue other than looking at the door and shining a light or hearing the breathing audio cue. As much as it hurts the game, honestly the game's horror is still fine on its own. Adding the backside with Freddy was good because it added another level of management, and the little toys are creepy. But it's actually at a loss of gameplay because we don't get to see the rest of the house like we did in the last games. Even FNAF 3, which only had one animatronic that could harm you, you had to track him around. This one you just look around, it's not as scary. What's scary? Losing a killer animatronic when you knew where they were just at, or looking at a door and shining a flashlight. The other thing that this game takes out is Phone Guy, which means that the tutorial for the game is shown in boxes saying press here to do this, which takes away from the immersion that the first 3 had. But again, it just gets harder every night. There's a 6th really hard night and boom, you're done. But actually there's more to this game. There are again 8-bit cutscenes / minigames that can be played between nights. You play as a crying child who constantly gets jump scared by your older brother in a Foxy mask. There isn't much, you really just walk around, get jump scared, then die.
Hey guys, I think the little man said he wants to give Fredbear a big kiss. On 3, 1, 2. Was that the bite of 87?
But there's actually even more. There are other minigames, the two most famous being Fun Time with Plush Trap and Balloon Boy, where they sit on a chair and you flash a flashlight to stop them from attacking you. It's simple really, but at the same time creepy. Balloon Boys is the same but faster and harder. Honestly, this game isn't as good as many make it out to be. And it's not because it breaks what the last few FNAF games have done, but because it changes the good things while keeping the bad or mediocre things low. The animatronics aren't hard to scare off or avoid, even on night 5. If we aren't going to be tracking them, they shouldn't be moving more. Bonnie and Chica limited to one side is bad because it limits how much you need to focus on both sides, but they do that in the first game. Yes, but you also have to watch them move from the back and up to the store, so it's not just appearing at your door. This progression made sense. It doesn't make sense that you'd have to watch a camera watching the house when you're a little kid, but it really limits what the game allows the player to do, in a game where you're actually finally able to move your character for the first time. Sounds weird, but that's how it is. Sadly, this one isn't that good. It's fun, but the basics of FNAF are more basic and more simple, making the game not as good. FNAF 5 is objectively the best FNAF game. It keeps that FNAF-like feeling of simplicity that 4 and 3 lacked, while also having more gameplay and features than 1 and 2. It also has the most story bits, not only during the cutscenes in between nights, but as you play the nights, since there's real voice acting and stuff to do other than sit in one room. This game is more than just survival now, there are actual tasks and locations in order to complete those nights. So there's always a start to the night with a voiceover while you descend in the elevator. He has some quirks which just make the game more lively and exciting. And he isn't the only voice actor. This game adds a ton, and not just the usual say lines because I'm an animatronic, it's lines meant to talk to the player, like a story game interacting with new characters.
So, funny story, a dead body was found in this vent once. Okay, so not that funny, but it's a story.
They have a few lines with William Afton's daughter, who is also the orange-headed girl in FNAF 4. The best voice acting added is Baby, who tries saving you multiple times throughout the nights. She even tells you not to listen to the automated voice helper, who has been very helpful so far, and it's a scary choice. Which do you listen to? Playing the game over again, you know that Baby is telling the truth, but for the first time, it's an honest mix-up on what you should do. But that's what this game leaves itself open to when there's more than just sitting in a room. It's still FNAF, and it still feels like FNAF, just with more to it. All the actions still feel the same, there's just more. And that's probably why 3 and 4 were testing out stuff so that this game could have as much in it as possible. So in this game, instead of a night security guard, you are a maintenance worker, which again opens itself up to so much more possibilities. Instead of just watching cameras, you crawl around through the ventilation shafts to fix the animatronics for the next night. Every shift requires you to do a little more, which makes you have to move more. The first few are very basic, electrocute the animatronics to make sure they are ready for tomorrow. It gets more interesting when you actually have to open up Freddy and reboot the system, then have him possibly jump scare you because you don't know what's happening. And because this is a more story-based game, there are events that happen, like being stuck in an animatronic on night 4. The whole time voice acting from Baby is happening overhead, while you're trapped inside, still able to move, but now you feel trapped more because you were able to move more beforehand. If you got trapped like what happens, but beforehand you were already sitting in a room like the other FNAF games, you wouldn't feel as trapped because nothing has changed about your movement ability.
That way they can find you on the cameras.
But since we are able to move between rooms and somewhat roam around, that trapped feeling is much more scary. Then sitting in the open suit for what feels like an eternity as you slowly click the spring locks back into place, knowing if you mess up you're dead.
You don't want them to get too loose. Trust me.
And night 5 again, there is more gameplay. This time you're fixing Baby, and she gives you a ton of instructions for what to do and how to fix the issue, while also explaining story things like how she wants to destroy the bad parts about her. Now, about this time, we trust her. She helped before with the automated recorder. It seems like you should trust her, but you actually get scooped, and for a story-based game, it's actually a twist. But with that, the main game was over, and you finally had a story-based FNAF game that had actual stuff to do. Not just survive, but do the things the game tells you to do. This is why I say it's objectively the best, because it's an actual game. Now it might seem a little different than the other FNAF games, but it's fine because it still feels like FNAF. But just one that you can actually move around in, which is so much better. In between nights, you can actually watch a show about Vlad and his girlfriend, which foreshadows what will happen in the next shift, but the only gameplay is eating popcorn and watching the show. There is also an 8-bit minigame where you play as Baby and give cupcakes to different kids. There's an ice cream at the end that you can bring back to the start screen to bring to the orange-haired girl, then scoop her. We assume this is the same girl from FNAF 4, and it's William Afton's daughter. There's also a secret location that kinda acts like the Secret Night 6. There is power, usage, and monitors like FNAF 1 and 2, and you have to survive until 6 AM. This is what happens if you don't get scooped by Baby, and it honestly feels like FNAF 1 and 2, but better. It's darker, with 3 entrances that the cameras view directly instead of lights to see, and Baby talks over it the whole night, talking about how you want to see her, assuming that you were playing as William or Mike Afton wanting to see their daughter or sister respectively. But just make it through the night and get the final Vlad show, and that's it, that's the game. The game is still objectively the best. It has 2 endings, a good and a bad one, and you either get scooped or live in the safe room. But there's so much to it that the 2 endings is fine. I'll say it again, but having the player be a maintenance worker instead of a night guard allows for so much to do within the game. You have so much more free roaming ability that the game actually opens itself to more possibilities. Pizzeria Simulator, the weird 6th FNAF game. Honestly, although this game might seem like an upgrade to FNAF's sister location, it's so weird that it actually falls a little short to that game. In this game, you take the role of a new Fazbear location manager. It's honestly very weird. In a game about a child killer and living animatronics, it's weird. So, unlike Sister Location, where it changes a lot of the gameplay but makes it feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's game still, this game adds some stuff that feels very out of place. Especially the portion where you're purchasing stuff and placing it like it's Animal Crossing. But let's talk about the actual Five Nights playthrough portion first. You sit at a computer, printing things like menus for your pizzeria, where there are 2 vents on your 2 sides that you can shine your lights in. If you hear something, you can shut down the vents to block something from entering, or stare at it with your flashlight. The computer can scan for motion and play audio in any of the squares in the 5x3 grid. You have daily tasks, a list of things you need to do, in which is just a series of press the button in the computer with the blinking triangle and don't make too much noise. But playing audio will always allow you to not be making too much noise at any given time. Honestly, this is the most lackluster section not only of this game, but of the Five Nights at Freddy's main games. Even FNAF 3 had a camera system and FNAF 4 had a turnaround mechanic. No, this one is really just 2 vents that really seem harmless. Shutting down the system means many things, but most likely means you will overheat and then pass out from heat exhaustion, meaning free kill for the animatronics. These days are also not time-based, but based on how quickly you finish the tasks at hand, which means with every day you have more tasks required of you. But because it's so basic, the tasks literally just require you to click the screen. Do you see why this is a problem? The tasks in FNAF 3 actually meant something. They were saving your life, as well as the tasks in FNAF sister location, which were done more practically. These tasks are literally just touching buttons and then making a slight amount of noise. How are you unclogging the toilet by pressing a button? Not only is it not practical, it's not fun to do. The only stress is that there are so many to complete that the night seems overwhelming. Really, the animatronics attacking you seem harmless other than a few audio cues, but if you play audio, they seem to just go away. Yes, the main playthrough of the game seems like a waste of time and isn't even that fun. You're back to sitting in one room and only able to look left and right. But now, this time the saving mechanic makes no sense. It takes back the idea from FNAF 3, while also having a sliver of similarity to FNAF 2, where shining the light forces them to go away. There is also no camera system, just again this 3x5 grid for the ventilations. But it's so basic and the animatronics never really attack you that the meaningless press of the buttons on the computers seem pointless and no fun. But for once, this section isn't actually the bulk of the game. There's a lot more to do in this game than just sit in a room portion, and it seems that that's the point. The next section happens at the end of every shift, and this is the true horror of the game. Every night you salvage an old animatronic. These are all ones that have shown up in past games. Every night the audio plays a few times to see if there's a reaction from the animatronics, which is honestly random and not scary. And with every movement, all you have to do is either pause the audio or flash the taser. After every audio log, you fill out if the animatronic responded or not, and that's it. And you get a little extra money for the main portion that we will be talking about momentarily. These animatronics will also now haunt you while you work, meaning that the more you take in every day will be harder. The point is to take them in though, you need the extra money. Or you could just not and not take all the scares, it's honestly all the same. Now for the main portion of the game. In this portion you buy and place items like it's Animal Crossing all over the pizzeria in hopes of gaining more revenue and Faz points. With the money you can buy animatronics such as Rockstar versions of the original 4 or new ones like this Frog and Hippo. There are also mini-games within these portions such as a ball pit minigame where you jump and hope to land in the ball pit. You should also try the whole time to be safe and not get any illegal fees because they cost a lot, but allow for a fun little minigame where you will most likely go broke. But other than that and the minigames, there isn't much more gameplay wise. There are a few new 8-bit minigames which are honestly more cutscenes at this point and add no actual gameplay. There are a few interesting ones like a car driving through a street, and one with a girl becoming the puppet, but other than that there is nothing very new. The only good thing I can say about this game is the unique voice acting. They brought in a new character, again an automated recording system that helps you throughout your management, but he's very quirky and honestly funny. And with how different the pizzeria section can be played, there are so many possible outcomes, just as being called insane or going bankrupt. So what's so bad about this game? Well, it feels recycled like the first and second one, but with way worse mechanics. Now this is because other sections of the mechanics were more focused on than other sections, seemingly more important, because they were story based. The pizzeria builder part is very thought out and very well made. It's not as good as games like Animal Crossing, but it's not supposed to be, so it gets a pass. But having the main gameplay that the series is known for be so lame is impassable. Adding on the section as the end is not passable either, especially when you are much more likely to get jump scared salvaging an animatronic than you are from actually spending time in the office. These jump scares also seem like no threat since they don't kill you in the salvaging mode. Again, you could always reject all the animatronics and just not get any jump scares, which is a total possibility in a horror game for some reason. This game's defining feature is that it is so bizarre and lackluster that it's only remembered for the story elements hidden within the audio and cutscenes. Other than that, this game is not worth the time because its gameplay is honestly not fun. The basic story is okay, but it's not worth playing once you know the story bits, so maybe one playthrough is worth it, but that's all I'd suggest. So I know I said I was going to review VR and not talk about FNAF World since it's basically not a FNAF game. Well, I wanted to do FNAF VR since there's a whole story to it, but I don't own a VR, and have played very limited VR, so I don't think my opinion on gameplay can be validated like the last few games. VR is so different from regular PC gaming, and FNAF VR actually has a lot of other games thrown into VR form. So I just want to run down and say that these games still stand in VR. Most mechanics still work as intended. The worst is FNAF 1's doors, mainly because the layout of that place isn't the best, but the only thing I can really say is apparently it's good. Apparently it has a good story and good secrets, and is a great conversion of FNAF to VR. But I can't really review it, not honestly. So I'm adding this section to the end so I can also talk about Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF World. So first, Ultimate Custom Night. It includes every animatronic, not counting a few, where you can set them all from 0 to 20, with all the values meaning the same thing. There are challenges with presets that allow you to relive other FNAF games like 1 or 2, or other challenges like only Bonnie and Chica. Like Ultimate Custom Nights and other games, it's just a nice addition that means nothing, except that this one actually has a canon moment in the story. This is William Afton Ronnie in Hell, where the soul of Golden Freddy is haunting him. Other than that, it's just a good addition because it's the ultimate crossover from game to game. Now, FNAF World. This game is, well, bad. It's funny though. It's an RPG set where you play as any of the FNAF characters or animatronics. It's a pretty basic RPG, but there's no gameplay like FNAF usually has. That's why I don't consider it a FNAF game, because it doesn't have the main FNAF game style. It is still a game, maybe even a good RPG, but it's just not the same that it takes place in the FNAF universe. It exists, and if you like FNAF and RPGs, check it out. That's all I really want to talk about it though. So that's it. Every FNAF game in one video. I tried my best to be fair with new gameplay and new mechanics, while also judging them based off of previous ones that have shown up in the series. I also judged the story slightly, but only when it made sense. This is a game series that has a lot of games coming out very frequently, so to be able to take a look at them all at once is nice. I hope this was the video you were looking for. If you liked it, please leave a like and comment which FNAF game is your favorite or least favorite, and also consider subscribing. Chef and I have been trying to do a lot more with this channel, especially with live streaming, which you can now find a playlist for on our channel. The videos are unlisted and can only be found through the playlist, mainly because we don't want them clogging up our feed. And we just started, so if you have stuff you want us to do, let us know by joining our Discord and telling us. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.